The howling winds of Sector 4G clawed at Commander Zamir's visor as he stepped onto the frozen surface. The planet's infamous ice storms were worse than intelligence had suggested. Torrents of crystalline shards sliced through the air, carried by gale-force winds that produced an unearthly wailing, reminiscent of predatory beasts. His team of 3 followed behind, their footsteps crunching heavily in the densely packed snow. Visibility dropping to 15 meters. "Commander," Lieutenant Ali reported, his voice crackling through the comm system. "Thermal imaging systems struggling to penetrate the storm." Zamir nodded grimly, the gesture lost in his bulky environmental suit. The Interstellar Security Initiative hadn't sent them to this desolate outpost for a standard reconnaissance mission. 26 hours ago, an ISI satellite had detected an anomalous heat signature buried beneath 3 meters of ice, faint but persistent, defying the planet's average temperature of -70 degrees Celsius. "Captain Karim, deploy the thermal resonance scanner," Zamir ordered. "Faria, secure the perimeter. Something survived out here, and I want to know what." The storm intensified as they worked. The alien planet, seemingly intent on rejecting their presence. Lieutenant Faria established a protective force field, the energy barrier shimmering as ice particles bombarded its surface. Meanwhile, Karim unfolded a tripod-mounted device, its concentric rings pulsing with blue light as it began mapping the subsurface terrain. "Commander, I'm detecting a cavity approximately 12 meters northeast of our position," Karim announced, his dark eyes widening behind his visor. "The heat signature is concentrated there, but it's fluctuating, almost like a heartbeat." Zamir felt a chill that had nothing to do with the sub-zero temperatures. "All personnel, converge on those coordinates. Bring extraction equipment." The team trudged through the snowdrifts, leaning into the howling wind. The extraction process was painstaking. Layer after layer of compacted ice had to be carefully removed to avoid damaging whatever lay beneath. 3 hours into the operation, Ali's plasma cutter struck something that wasn't ice. "Commander, I've found something," Ali called out, excitement breaking through his professional demeanor. Zamir rushed to his side, dropping to his knees beside a small, dark shape embedded in the translucent blue ice. As they carefully cleared away the remaining frost, disbelief spread through the team. It was a child, a small, humanoid figure, no larger than a 5-year-old human child, lay curled in fetal position. Its skin was a pale blue-green, almost luminescent against the stark white ice. Delicate features suggested a female form, with wispy white hair floating around her head like a halo. Most startling was a metallic bracelet firmly clasped around her tiny wrist, bearing the inscription U-47 in a script Zamir didn't recognize. "Is it alive?" Faria whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Karim ran a medical scanner over the small form. "Incredible. There are life signs, but they're unlike anything in our database. Extremely slow metabolism, nearly suspended animation." Zamir's mind raced. ISI protocol was clear. Unknown alien life forms were to be documented, but left undisturbed until a full xenobiological assessment team could be deployed. Removing the child would violate at least 7 regulations. Yet, something in him rebelled against the thought of leaving this fragile being buried in ice while bureaucrats debated her fate. "Prepare a stasis chamber," he commanded, his decision made. "We're bringing her back to base." Ali looked up sharply. "Commander, that's against protocol for Class A bioforms without proper clearance." "I'm aware of the regulations, Lieutenant," Zamir replied, his tone brooking no argument. "But I'm not leaving a child, any child, to die on this frozen rock while we wait for paperwork. That's an order." The extraction was delicate. They worked methodically to free the small body without causing thermal shock. As Zamir carefully lifted the child from her icy prison, her eyelids fluttered, revealing irises of startling violet that fixed briefly on his face before closing again. "She saw me," Zamir whispered, a strange protective instinct surging through him. "She's aware." The return journey to their ship was treacherous, the storm having intensified to near hurricane levels. Zamir cradled the stasis pod containing the child against his chest, shielding it with his body as they fought their way back through the blizzard. By the time they reached the safety of their vessel, ice had formed a half-inch crust over their suits. "Set course for ISI Outpost Himalaya," Zamir instructed as they secured the stasis pod in the ship's medical bay. "And prepare for pushback. Headquarters isn't going to like this." He was right. The moment their ship docked at the remote mountain base nestled in Earth's Himalayan range, Zamir was summoned to a video conference with his superior, Commander Malik. "You extracted an unclassified alien life form without authorization," Malik stated, his face stern on the view screen. "Do you have any idea of the protocols you've violated, Zamir?" "With respect, sir, this isn't just any life form," Zamir replied, standing rigidly at attention. "It's a child, a sentient being who would have died if left in those conditions." "That determination is not yours to make," Malik countered. "The entity should have remained in situ until a proper xenobiological team could assess it. Now, we have an unknown alien species inside one of our most secure facilities, with no understanding of its capabilities or potential hazards. The medical team has confirmed she poses no biological threat," Zamir argued. "She's in a containment unit with full monitoring. And sir, she was wearing manufactured items, a bracelet with markings. This isn't some undiscovered species. Someone put her there." Malik's expression darkened. "That makes this even more complicated. If someone deliberately abandoned this child on Sector 4G, they may have had reasons we are now interfering with. Or they may have been trying to hide evidence of something illegal," Zamir countered. "Either way, I stand by my decision." After a long moment, Malik sighed. "You have 48 hours to produce some answers, Commander. After that, I'm sending in a specialized containment team to transfer the entity to Central Headquarters for full analysis." The screen went dark before Zamir could respond. Back in the medical bay, Zamir found the alien child had been transferred to a specially designed quarantine chamber, a transparent enclosure with controlled atmosphere and temperature. Medical Officer Santos was monitoring vital signs from a console nearby. "How is she?" Zamir asked, approaching the glass wall that separated them from the small, blue-skinned figure. "Stable, but still in a state similar to hibernation," Santos replied. "Body temperature rising gradually. We're keeping the chamber cool to avoid shocking her system. Fascinating physiology. Her cellular structure has properties I've never seen before. Almost crystalline in some aspects." Zamir studied the child through the glass. Clean device. Her features were more visible now. Delicate, pointed ears, fine bone structure, and those wisps of white hair that seemed to float as if underwater. The metallic bracelet still encircled her wrist, its strange inscriptions catching the light. "Has anyone been able to identify the writing on that bracelet?" he asked. Santos shook his head. "Not yet. It doesn't match any known language in our database. And the material is unusual too. Initial analysis suggests it contains elements not found in our periodic table." Zamir found himself returning to the medical bay frequently over the next hours, drawn by a responsibility he couldn't quite explain. He began speaking to the child through the glass, uncertain if she could hear him, but compelled to try nonetheless. "You're safe now," he told her during one such visit, placing his palm against the transparent barrier. "I don't know where you came from or how you ended up on that frozen planet, but I promise you're safe here." On his third visit, something extraordinary happened. The child's eyes opened, those striking violet irises focusing directly on him. For a moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, she extended her small hand toward the glass, mirroring his gesture, until their palms would have touched, if not for the barrier between them. "Hello there," Zamir said softly, a smile breaking across his usually stern features. "Welcome back." Dr. Santos rushed over, excitement evident in his voice. "Commander, this is incredible. Her neural activity just spiked dramatically. She's responding to you specifically. Her eyes tracked you when you entered the room." Over the following hours, the child became increasingly responsive. She accepted small amounts of a glucose solution, studied everyone who approached with those intelligent violet eyes, and seemed particularly interested in Zamir. When he entered the room, her attention would immediately fix on him, following his movements with curious intensity. "She needs a name," Zamir found himself saying, as he watched her examining a simple puzzle Dr. Santos had provided through a sealed transfer chamber. "We can't just keep referring to her as the subject, or the alien child. That's getting attached, Commander," Ali warned from nearby. "Remember, she's being transferred in less than 36 hours. Zamir ignored the warning. "Snowdrop," he decided, watching as she delicately manipulated the puzzle pieces with slender blue fingers. "Because we found her in the snow, and because she's as delicate and resilient as those first flowers that push through winter frost." The name seemed to please her. When Zamir next addressed her as Snowdrop, she looked up immediately, the faintest smile touching her lips. It was the first emotional expression they'd seen from her, and it transformed her alien features into something heart-wrenchingly familiar, a child's simple joy at being acknowledged. That night, while reviewing security footage of Snowdrop's chamber, Zamir noticed something strange. When all medical personnel had left and the lights were dimmed, the child had pressed herself against the glass wall and whispered a single word, over and over. "Baba." The word struck Zamir like a physical blow. In his native language, it meant father. How could she know this term? Was it coincidence? Some sound from her own language that happened to resemble this word? Or did it suggest something far more complex about her origins? He rushed back to the medical bay, finding Snowdrop awake and watching the door, as if expecting him. When she saw him, that same faint smile appeared, and she pressed her small palm against the glass. "Baba," she whispered, the word barely audible through the communication system. Zamir felt something shift inside him, a protective instinct so powerful it overwhelmed his professional detachment. This child remembered something or someone. She had a past, a history that had been violently interrupted when she was abandoned on that frozen planet. And now, for whatever reason, she had connected to him. "I need full access to all xenobiological databases," he informed Ali the next morning. "And I want to run her DNA against all known species catalogs." "Commander, that would require special clearance," Ali protested. "Those databases are restricted." "Then, get me the clearance," Zamir replied firmly. "And I want the bracelet analyzed again. Not just the writing, but any trace elements that might tell us where it was manufactured. Check migration logs for any ships that passed through Sector 4G in the last standard year. Someone put her there, and I want to know who." As the team worked, Zamir spent more time with Snowdrop. Dr. Santos had determined that her physiology was stabilizing and suggested that limited physical contact might be beneficial for her psychological well-being. After extensive decontamination procedures, Zamir was allowed to enter the quarantine chamber. The moment was profound. Snowdrop approached him cautiously at first, studying his face with those intelligent violet eyes. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reached out and took his hand in her tiny blue one. "Baba," she said again, more confidently this time. Zamir knelt to her level. "My name is Zamir," he said gently. "Can you tell me your name?" She tilted her head, considering his words. Then she touched the bracelet on her wrist and said something in a language he couldn't understand. a melodic series of sounds that seemed to flow like water. "Snowdrop it is, then," he said with a smile. "At least for now." Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While examining the child's few possessions, the clothes she had been wearing when found, Kareem discovered a small scrap of fabric with partial embroidery. When placed under spectral analysis, hidden markings appeared. ISA Terra 47. ISA could be Interstellar Science Association, Ali suggested during their emergency briefing. They fund research outposts throughout the quadrant. And Terra clearly refers to Earth or Earth-like conditions, Faria added. But 47? A project designation, perhaps. Or a location, Zamir said thoughtfully. Run a cross-reference on all ISA facilities with designation 47. The search yielded a remote research station on Proxima Centauri b, established 47 Earth years ago as one of humanity's first extrasolar scientific outposts. It had reportedly been abandoned after a catastrophic atmospheric event 20 years prior. "That's our next destination," Zamir decided. "Prepare the ship." "Commander, we have less than 18 hours before the containment team arrives," Ali reminded him. "And we have no authorization for an expedition to Proxima Centauri." Zamir looked through the glass at Snowdrop, who was creating intricate patterns with a set of colored blocks Dr. Santos had provided. "Then, we'll need to move quickly. File an emergency investigation request. Tell Commander Malik we've found evidence of potential illegal xenobiological experimentation involving a sentient species. That should buy us some time." The strategy worked, barely. Commander Malik grudgingly approved a 72-hour investigative mission to Proxima Centauri b, with the strict condition that Snowdrop remain in a secure containment unit throughout the journey. The voyage took 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. As they approached the planet's surface, evidence of the catastrophic event that had supposedly caused the station's abandonment was clearly visible. Vast areas of the surface scarred by what appeared to be explosive force. "Atmospheric readings normal," Kareem reported as their ship entered orbit. "No signs of active radiation or chemical hazards." "Scan for artificial structures," Zamir ordered. "Specifically, look for anything that might have survived whatever happened here." The scanners revealed what remained of the ISI research station, a cluster of ruined buildings half buried under regolith and debris. But more interestingly, they detected vehicle tracks leading away from the main compound to a series of hills approximately 12 kilometers distant. "Those tracks shouldn't still be visible after 20 years, Faria noted. "Not with the wind patterns on this planet." "Which means someone's been here more recently," Zamir concluded. "Take us down." The landing was smooth, and the team deployed in full environmental suits despite the breathable atmosphere, standard procedure for investigating potentially contaminated sites. Following the mysterious tracks led them to an unusual formation in the hillside, what appeared to be a cleverly disguised entrance to an underground facility. "Blast residue around the doorframe," Ali observed, running a scanner over the metal surface. "Someone forced their way in. Recently." The entrance led to a descending tunnel carved into the bedrock, illuminated by emergency lighting that still functioned despite years of abandonment. As they proceeded deeper, the tunnel opened into a vast underground complex, far larger than the official blueprints for the research station had indicated. "This facility doesn't appear in any ISI records," Kareem confirmed, checking his datapad. "It's completely off the books." The complex was eerily preserved, as if its occupants had fled in haste. Laboratories contained sophisticated equipment, much of it still operational. In one room, they found rows of large cylindrical tanks filled with a cloudy preservation fluid, all empty now, but clearly designed to hold biological specimens. "What were they doing here?" Faria whispered, her voice hushed with apprehension. Their answer came in a central control room, where Zamir discovered a still functional computer terminal. Accessing its files required bypassing several security measures, but Ali's expertise eventually granted them entry to the system. What they found was horrifying. Project Nest. Zamir read from the main file directory. A classified initiative to splice alien and human DNA. His voice faltered as the implications became clear. The video logs told a sickening story. Scientists in ISI uniforms, speaking clinically about specimens and successful hybridization. Images of children, dozens of them, with varying degrees of alien characteristics. Some looked almost entirely human, while others, like Snowdrop, displayed more pronounced non-human traits. They were creating hybrid children, Karim said, his voice thick with disgust. Experimenting with combining human and alien genetic material. But why? Faria asked. What possible purpose could this serve? Another set of files provided their answer. Military applications, enhanced physical capabilities, potential psychic abilities, adaptability to hostile environments. The children weren't seen as people, but as prototypes for a new kind of bioweapon. Keep searching, Zamir ordered, struggling to contain his outrage. I want to know what happened to this facility and the children who were here. In a secondary laboratory, they found their grimmest discovery yet. A row of smaller stasis pods, each containing the remains of failed experiments. Children whose bodies had rejected the genetic modifications, whose systems had collapsed under the strain of their artificially engineered existence. These monsters, Ali murmured, turning away from the site. How could anyone do this? In a locked office adjacent to the laboratory, Karim discovered financial records that shed light on the facility's true operators. Commander, according to these files, this wasn't an official ISA project at all. It was covertly funded by something called Dominion Biopharm, a private corporation specializing in genetic engineering and biological weapons. The ISA connection was just a cover, Zamir realized. A way to operate without oversight or ethical constraints. The final piece of the puzzle came from a damaged security recording dated just 3 years earlier, long after the facility had supposedly been abandoned. It showed a team of armed individuals in unmarked uniforms, systematically collecting samples and data, then placing the surviving children in stasis pods for transport. They evacuated the project, Faria concluded. But why leave Snowdrop behind on Sector 4G? Zamir replayed a segment of the recording, focusing on a conversation between two figures. Subject U-47 shows anomalous psionic development, one was saying. Potential threat to containment protocols. Recommend separate handling and isolation until abilities can be properly suppressed. That's why they abandoned her, Zamir said quietly. They were afraid of her. When they returned to their ship, Zamir went immediately to Snowdrop's containment unit. The child was sitting cross-legged on the floor, seemingly meditating. When she sensed his presence, her violet eyes opened, regarding him with an intelligence that seemed far beyond her apparent physical age. We found where you came from, he told her gently. And I promise you, you'll never go back there. For the first time since they'd found her, tears welled in Snowdrop's eyes. She placed her palm against the glass, and Zamir matched the gesture from his side. Baba, she whispered, home? The question broke something in Zamir's carefully maintained professional facade. This child, engineered, exploited, and abandoned, was asking if she had a home. In that moment, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Yes, he promised. I'll make sure you have a home. Back on Earth, their report created a firestorm within ISI Command. Commander Malik, initially skeptical, became their strongest ally after viewing the evidence they'd gathered. This goes beyond a simple violation of interstellar law, Malik declared during an emergency briefing. It's a crime against sentient life itself. I've authorized a full investigation into Dominion Biopharm and any connected entities. But before justice could take its course, a new threat emerged. Dominion Biopharm filed an emergency injunction, claiming proprietary biological assets had been illegally seized by ISI operatives. "They're claiming ownership of her," Zamir said incredulously, after being served with the legal documents. "As if she were property." "Unfortunately, there are precedents," the ISI legal counsel explained grimly. "Genetically engineered organisms have been classified as intellectual property in several past cases. Until we can establish Snowdrop's legal personhood, Dominion may have a claim." "She's a child, not an organism," Zamir objected vehemently. "She speaks, she thinks, she feels. How can there be any question of her personhood?" "Because she was created, not born," the lawyer replied. "At least, that's the argument they'll make. And they have powerful allies." The legal battle dragged on for weeks, during which Snowdrop remained in ISI custody. Zamir had been officially assigned as her guardian, a role he embraced with unexpected devotion. Under his care, Snowdrop's development accelerated. She began learning English, showed remarkable aptitude for mathematics and spatial reasoning, and formed bonds with several of the ISI personnel. Most significantly, she revealed abilities that confirmed why Dominion had feared her enough to abandon her on that frozen planet. When upset or frightened, she could generate a field of energy that interfered with electronic devices. When calm and focused, she demonstrated limited telepathic abilities, not mind-reading exactly, but a profound empathic sense that allowed her to perceive emotions and intentions. "She's extraordinary," Dr. Santos reported after one evaluation session. "Her brain activity suggests she's processing information in ways we can barely comprehend. And she's still developing. These abilities may be just the beginning." Zamir found himself increasingly protective of Snowdrop, not just from external threats, but from those within ISI who viewed her as a research subject rather than a person. He insisted on normal childhood experiences whenever possible, age-appropriate games, stories, music. In return, Snowdrop's attachment to him deepened. She began calling him Abu instead of Baba, a subtle shift in pronunciation that somehow felt more personal, more specific to him. Their peaceful routine was shattered one night when perimeter alarms blared throughout the ISI mountain base. Security monitors showed a team of heavily armed operatives breaching the outer defenses with military precision. "Dominion's mercenaries," Malik confirmed via emergency comm as Zamir rushed to Snowdrop's quarters. "They're after the child. Protection detail is en route to your location." But Zamir knew they wouldn't arrive in time. The intruders were moving too quickly, neutralizing ISI security with inside knowledge of the base's layout and protocols. Someone had provided them with classified information. He found Snowdrop already awake, her violet eyes wide with fear. "Bad people coming," she said simply. "Yes," Zamir confirmed, grabbing an emergency kit from beneath her bed. "But I won't let them take you. Do you trust me?" She nodded without hesitation. "Always, Abu." Zamir activated the room's defense protocols, then opened a hidden panel in the wall, an emergency escape route known only to senior officers. As they entered the narrow passage, the sound of weapons fire echoed from the corridor outside. "This way," he whispered, guiding Snowdrop through the dark tunnel. "We need to reach the secondary command center." They had almost reached their destination when the wall beside them exploded inward, showering them with debris. Through the dust and smoke, Zamir saw 3 armored figures, weapons raised. "Hand over property designation 97A, the lead figure demanded, voice distorted through a tactical helmet. "Compliance will be rewarded." "She's not property," Zamir growled, pushing Snowdrop behind him. "And you're trespassing on an ISI secure facility. Surrender your weapons." The mercenaries' response was a barrage of suppressive fire that forced Zamir to dive for cover, pulling Snowdrop with him behind a structural support column. He returned fire with his sidearm, knowing he was outgunned and outnumbered. "Stay down," he instructed Snowdrop. "When I create an opening, run for that doorway. The command center is just beyond it." But Snowdrop wasn't listening. Her eyes had taken on an unearthly glow, and the air around her shimmered with an electric blue aura. "No more running, Abu," she said, her childish voice suddenly resonant with power. Before Zamir could stop her, Snowdrop stepped out from behind the column, facing the advancing mercenaries. They hesitated, momentarily startled by the small, glowing figure standing defiantly before them. "Target acquired," one announced, raising his weapon. What happened next occurred too quickly for Zamir to fully process. Snowdrop raised her small hands, and a pulse of energy erupted from her body in a concentric wave. The mercenaries' weapons sparked and malfunctioned, their communication devices emitting high-pitched squeals of feedback. The lights throughout the corridor flickered and died. In the momentary darkness and confusion, Zamir acted instinctively. He launched himself at the nearest attacker, disarming him with a practiced move and using the mercenary's own weapon against his companions. The firefight was brief, but intense, Zamir's ISI combat training giving him an edge despite being outnumbered. When backup finally arrived, they found Zamir wounded but conscious, 2 mercenaries unconscious, and the third restrained with his own equipment. Snowdrop was kneeling beside Zamir, her small hands pressed against a bleeding wound in his side, her face streaked with tears. "Hurt," she said simply, looking up at the ISI security team with pleading eyes. "Help Abu." The attack proved to be Dominion's undoing. The captured mercenaries provided evidence that linked the corporation directly to the illegal raid, and ISI's intelligence division uncovered a network of bribery and coercion that had facilitated the breach of their security systems. More damning still were the files recovered from the mercenaries' equipment, detailed extraction protocols for Asset 97A that treated Snowdrop as nothing more than a valuable specimen to be recovered at any cost. The documents referred explicitly to her as engineered property and outlined plans for disassembly and analysis once she was back in Dominion's custody. The evidence was presented to the Galactic Council, Earth's governing body for interstellar affairs. Faced with irrefutable proof of Dominion's illegal genetic experimentation, attempted kidnapping of a sentient being, and assault on an ISI facility, the Council had no choice but to act. Dominion's assets were frozen, pending a full investigation, and arrest warrants were issued for its senior executives. For Zamir, however, these developments were secondary to a more personal concern. His injuries from the firefight were severe. A laser pulse had damaged internal organs and caused significant blood loss. For 3 days, he drifted in and out of consciousness in the ISI medical facility, aware sometimes of a small blue hand clasping his own, of violet eyes watching him anxiously. When he finally regained full consciousness, Commander Malik was waiting beside his bed. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Zamir," he said with uncharacteristic warmth. "You had us worried." "Snowdrop," Zamir managed to ask, his voice hoarse. "Is she safe?" Malik nodded. "More than safe. She's been officially granted protected status by the Galactic Council while her case is reviewed. And she hasn't left your side since you were brought in." He gestured to a small cot that had been set up in the corner of the medical bay, where Snowdrop lay sleeping, curled around what appeared to be Zamir's uniform jacket. "She kept saying you needed her," Malik explained. "Dr. Santos believes she may actually have been helping you heal. Some kind of energy transfer. Your recovery has been unusually rapid." Zamir smiled weakly. "She's full of surprises." "Indeed." Malik's expression became more serious. "Which brings me to an official matter. The Council has asked ISI to recommend a permanent guardian for the child, given her unique nature and potential. Someone who understands her capabilities and needs. Someone she trusts." He paused significantly. "I've taken the liberty of submitting your name, if you're willing." The question caught Zamir off guard. His career had been his life for so long. The structured discipline of ISI, the clear chain of command, the defined missions, taking responsibility for a child, especially one as extraordinary as Snowdrop, would change everything. Yet, looking at the small figure sleeping peacefully in the corner, he realized the decision had already been made the moment he'd found her buried in the ice of Sector 4G. "I'm willing," he said simply. 1 year later, Zamir stood in the courtyard of a small school on Earth's northern continent, watching as children poured out of the building at the end of the day. Among them was a girl whose skin had been genetically modified to appear human, pale, with just the faintest hint of blue undertones that most would attribute to the cool climate. Her white blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her violet eyes, hidden behind specialized contact lenses in public, scanned the crowd until they found him. "Abu!" she called out, breaking into a run and launching herself into his arms with childish enthusiasm. Zamir caught her easily, swinging her around in a circle that made her laugh, a sound he never tired of hearing. "How was school today, Snowdrop?" he asked, setting her down and taking her hand as they walked toward home. "Good, I told my story in class," she announced proudly. "Oh, which story was that?" "The one about the brave space soldier who found a frozen girl on a faraway planet and became her Abu," she replied, skipping alongside him. "Ms. Thompson said it was very imaginative." Zamir chuckled. "I'm sure she did." Their home was modest but comfortable. A cottage near the mountains, far from the bustle of cities. It provided the privacy they needed for Snowdrop to be herself, without fear or concealment. Here, she could practice controlling her developing abilities under Zamir's patient guidance. Inside, holographic images decorated the walls, scenes from their adventures together over the past year, places they had visited, friends they had made. On a special shelf in the living room sat 2 treasured items: Zamir's ISI Commendation Medal for exceptional service, and a child's drawing labeled Abu and Me, showing a tall figure with dark skin holding hands with a small blue figure, stars surrounding them both. Zamir had officially transitioned to ISI's Earth-based training division, a position that allowed him to maintain his connection to the organization while providing a stable home for Snowdrop. The arrangement benefited both parties. ISI gained valuable insights into Snowdrop's unique abilities, which she was learning to control with remarkable precision, while she received the protection and resources she needed to thrive. Dominion Biofarm had been dissolved following the Council's investigation, its assets redistributed to fund rehabilitation programs for victims of illegal genetic experimentation. Most of Snowdrop's siblings from Project Nest remained undiscovered, either hidden away by Dominion before its collapse or lost to the vastness of space. ISI maintained an ongoing investigation, hoping to find and help any others who had survived. That evening, as had become their custom, Zamir and Snowdrop sat on the porch of their cottage, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. "Abu," Snowdrop said thoughtfully, "do you think there are others like me out there?" Zamir considered the question carefully. He had never lied to her, even about the difficult truths of her origin. "I think it's possible," he answered. "And if there are, we'll find them someday." She nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. Then she pointed excitedly at a streak of light crossing the sky. "Look, a shooting star!" Zamir watched the meteor's passage with a soldier's trained eye, noting its unusual trajectory and coloration. For a moment, his instincts prickled with concern. It looked too controlled, too purposeful to be a natural phenomenon. Then, Snowdrop's small hand slipped into his, and he pushed the thought aside. Whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together. Unknown to either of them, in a distant laboratory hidden beneath the surface of Europa, a scientist in an unmarked uniform reviewed data streaming from a probe that had just passed Earth's atmosphere. On a screen behind him, The genetic profile of subject U-47 was being compared to a series of new prototypes in various stages of development. "Remarkable adaptation," the scientist murmured, making notes on a tablet bearing the discreet logo of Corona Biopharm, Dominion's successor, risen from its ashes with new leadership, but the same ambitions. The bonding process was more successful than we anticipated. He sent a coded transmission. Phase 1, monitoring complete. Subject thriving in terrestrial environment. Proceeding with Phase 2 protocols. In the quiet mountain home on Earth, Snowdrop suddenly shivered despite the warm evening air. "Are you cold?" Zamir asked, immediately attentive. She shook her head, her violet eyes scanning the sky as if searching for something. "No. Just felt like someone walked over my grave." She used the human idiom perfectly, though its meaning related to nothing in her experience. Zamir put his arm around her shoulders protectively. "Just an old saying. Nothing to worry about." Snowdrop leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I know," she said quietly. "You always keep me safe." And he would, against whatever might come from the stars or from those who still saw her as something less than a person. The frozen alien child had found not just a rescuer, but a father. And in her, Zamir had found a purpose greater than any mission ISI could have assigned him. Together, they watched the stars. Two unlikely souls, forging a family bond that transcended biology, transcended species, a connection strong enough to withstand whatever the universe might send their way.